Tonight, we're looking at encounters that don't just involve strange lights in the sky, but something closer, objects that land, time that disappears, and witnesses who come away with memories they can't fully explain or fully trust. Welcome to Strange Encounters. Most UFO sightings end the same way. A light in the sky, a brief encounter, and then it's gone. But in the summer of 1979, in Toronto, one case didn't end there, because this time something landed and something came out. In the summer of 1979, in Toronto, Canada, a series of unusual events were reported by 3 college students. Their names were Sarah Highness, along with 2 others identified only as Kathy and Jackie. The encounters began on August 2nd at approximately 9:50 p.m. That evening, the 3 young women noticed a strange light shining in the sky. It remained visible long enough to draw their attention, and eventually, curiosity led them to walk toward the location where the light had been seen. Within minutes, 2 objects appeared from the north. They were described as arrow-shaped, emitting light, and flying at a low altitude over the area. After passing overhead, both objects changed direction and continued toward the west. Following behind them was a third object. This one was cigar-shaped. It also emitted light, but appeared dark, almost black in color. It displayed 3 distinct lights, 2 white lights positioned on its sides, and a green light at the tail. At first, the 3 women simply watched. Then they realized that the cigar-shaped object was following one of the arrow-shaped crafts. Moments later, another object appeared. This one was smaller, oval in shape. As it slowed, 4 curved landing props extended from beneath it. The craft then descended and landed briefly on the roof of a nearby college building. Seconds later, it shot up into the sky and disappeared at what was described as terrific speed. The sightings continued. On August 3rd and again on August 4th, similar UFOs were reported over the same area. But during the final encounter, the situation changed. This time, the object landed and something emerged. 4 entities came out of the spacecraft. They were described as shadowy or simply as forms. Their appearance was highly unusual. Each one resembled a sheet-like shape, similar to a flat surface, crossed by a horizontal line across the lower section. They were slightly taller than 1 meter in height and less than half a meter wide. They did not walk, they floated above the ground. At that moment, Sarah lost consciousness. When she became aware again, she found herself on board the object. She could not describe the interior clearly, only stating that it resembled a cell. From inside the craft, she could see a highway and a man walking his dog. Then she experienced a memory lapse. When she regained awareness again, she was standing outside, on the ground, approximately 4 to 5 meters from where the UFO had landed. The craft was gone, the entities were gone, and she could remember nothing more. When Sarah returned home, physical effects were noted. Her face had turned an intense red-orange color, and her pupils were widely dilated. Later, under hypnotic regression, additional details emerged. Sarah recalled walking through the wall of the spacecraft. Inside, there was a very bright light. She noticed that her hands could pass through everything she touched. While inside, she saw a strange animal resembling a cat. Also present were 7 non-humanoid intelligent beings again described only as forms. According to her account, these entities communicated that they were studying both her and the cat-like creature, which they indicated was also alien to them. She was also shown an image, a completely alien, red-colored world. The entities explained that this world existed in a kind of parallel universe. During a second hypnotic regression, Sarah recalled undergoing a physical examination. She described being examined with a beam of light. She believed she had been injected with an unknown substance. She also experienced a burning sensation in her mouth. Blood samples were taken from both her pinkies. After the examination, the entities took her outside the spacecraft to a field and instructed her to go to sleep. During a third hypnotic regression, another memory surfaced. Sarah recalled walking home from college when she encountered a tall man dressed entirely in black. During this encounter, she was completely paralyzed and unable to run or call for help. The man warned her not to speak about her encounter with the aliens, especially anything describing the inner structure of the spacecraft. Then, without transition, the man vanished. He simply evaporated into thin air. Even under hypnosis, Sarah was unable to describe any technical details of the equipment used during the examination. However, one physical detail remained. Strange puncture marks were found on both her pinkies. The case was later cataloged as HC edition number 410, documented by Richard Hall in Uninvited Guests, with references through Q-Forn and later quoted by Vladimir Ahazaz in The Other Life, published in Moscow in 1998. It's classified as a Type G and E encounter. No official explanation was ever given. Despite the level of detail in this account, it's not considered a strong, evidence-based case within UFO research. There are several reasons for this. First, there's no independent documentation. There are no known police reports, no medical records, and no contemporary news coverage from Toronto in August of 1979 that reference a landing, multiple UFOs, or unusual activity over a college campus. In a major city, an event involving multiple low-flying objects and a rooftop landing would be expected to generate additional witnesses. None are recorded. Second, while 3 witnesses are named at the beginning, Sarah Highness, Kathy, and Jackie, the detailed portion of the experience centers almost entirely on Sarah alone. The others do not appear to have provided extended accounts, particularly regarding the events of August 4th. Third, much of the extraordinary detail comes from hypnotic regression. This includes the interior of the craft, the presence of non-humanoid beings, the examination, the red-colored world, the encounter with the man in black. Hypnotic regression is widely considered unreliable as a source of factual memory due to the possibility of suggestion, reconstruction, and the blending of imagination with recall. Researchers such as Elizabeth Loftus have demonstrated how easily false or altered memories can form under these conditions. There are also elements in the account that are highly unusual, even when compared to other UFO reports. The description of the entities as flat, sheet-like forms is extremely rare. The presence of an alien cat that the beings themselves claim is not theirs is also highly atypical, and the idea of being able to see an ordinary highway scene from inside the craft introduces questions about perception and environment. Finally, the encounter with a man in black aligns closely with well-known UFO folklore. Accounts involving men in black often appear in cases that have already developed complex narratives and are rarely supported by independent evidence. Taken together, these factors place the case in a category that is difficult to verify. It remains a detailed and unusual account, but one that relies heavily on a single witness and reconstructed memory. In the end, the Toronto encounter of 1979 stands as one of the more unusual reports to come out of Canada, not because of what can be proven, but because of how much of it cannot. Judy Kendall lost 4 hours of her life while driving home, and when she finally began to remember what happened during that time, she almost wished she could forget it all over again. On the night of November 26, 1972, or possibly 1971, depending on which record you consult, 28-year-old Judy Kendall was driving back from a visit to her grandmother in Bodega Bay, California. Riding with her were her 2 younger sisters. It was a routine trip, the kind of long, quiet drive you make countless times without expecting anything unusual to happen. Bodega Bay sits along the cold northern California coast. Judy's home was inland, near the rural town of Zamora. The drive would take them through farmland and dark country highways, eventually crossing Cache Creek Bridge before the final stretch north. At around 8 o'clock that evening, Judy phoned her parents. She told them she had just crossed Cache Creek Bridge and expected to be home soon. There was nothing unusual in her voice, no sign that anything was wrong, but she didn't arrive soon. The car didn't pull into the driveway until close to midnight, nearly 4 hours later. In the early 1970s, there was no easy way to check on someone delayed on the road. No cell phones, no GPS, just worry and waiting. By the time Judy finally came through the door, her parents were already concerned. She seemed exhausted and disoriented, and she couldn't explain the missing time. There was only one detail she was certain about. She remembered crossing Cache Creek Bridge twice. The first crossing was clear in her mind. The phone call home, the drive inland, the quiet highway ahead. Then at some point along the road, she began to feel an overwhelming fatigue. Not ordinary tiredness, something heavier. She later described it as a sudden struggle just to keep her eyes open, as if sleep was being forced on her. And then there was the cold. Years later, under hypnotic regression, Judy described a deep, penetrating cold that seemed to surround the car. It wasn't just the chill of a late November night. It felt different, sharper, as though the temperature had dropped in a way that didn't belong on a rural highway. After that, the road simply disappeared from her memory. The next thing she recalled was waking up somewhere else entirely. She found herself lying on a hard surface inside a circular room. Windows lined the curved walls. Through them, she could see stars. Not the sky as you see it from the ground, but stars suspended against blackness. The cold was still there. It surrounded her, constant and invasive. She tried to move, but realized her head seemed partially restrained. Whenever she attempted to turn it, a sharp pressure built in her skull. 5 figures were in the room with her. The first one she noticed had what she described as insect-like eyes, large, dark, and unblinking. Their skin appeared pale, almost translucent, with faint red veins visible beneath the surface. They wore tight garments with high turtleneck collars that covered the lower half of their faces. She never clearly saw their mouths. One of them spoke to her, but the voice didn't seem to come from normal speech. Judy described it as amplified, almost mechanical, like words coming through a megaphone. The message itself was simple. She would not be harmed. 3 other figures stood nearby, dressed similarly, though their eyes did not appear quite as pronounced. Then there was the 5th individual. Unlike the others, She appeared completely human, a woman with long black hair and blue eyes, calm, composed. She spoke in a normal voice and tried to reassure Judy. In that strange room filled with unfamiliar beings, the woman's presence felt oddly grounding. What followed appeared to be some kind of medical examination. Judy believed she was catheterized during the procedure, though her memories of the details remained incomplete. One of her arms was restrained. Her feet were examined closely. At times she felt intense pressure in her head and sharp pain along her side. Breathing became difficult at several points, and through it all, the cold never left. At one moment, a large device was lowered over her face, blocking her vision completely. She heard a mechanical sound, something like a motor running, while the device operated. When it was removed, the room came back into view. But one moment disturbed her more than anything else. She believed she heard one of her sisters calling her name. The voice sounded frightened. To this day, she never knew for certain whether both sisters had been taken aboard as well or whether she had been alone. Eventually, the examination ended. She remembered being carried from the room, and then suddenly she was back in the car. Not gently placed there, thrown, as she described it, into the driver's seat. One of her sisters was beside her as if nothing unusual had happened. The engine was already running. The road stretched out in front of them in total silence. She felt overwhelmingly tired. Moments later, she crossed Cache Creek Bridge again. After that, the drive home was uneventful. No strange lights, no craft in the sky, just miles of dark rural highway. But the clock told a different story. Nearly 4 hours had passed. For several years, Judy tried to push the experience aside. The fragments of memory made little sense, and without context, it was easier to ignore them. Then, in 1975, she watched a television program about UFO encounters. Something about it unsettled her. Images from that night began to resurface. Feelings she had buried started to return. The following year, she underwent hypnotic regression with Dr. William McCall, working alongside UFO researcher Alvin Lawson. The sessions were later documented through the Center for UFO Studies. It was during those regressions that the details of the circular room, the strange beings, and the examination emerged. As with many cases recovered through hypnosis, the story raises difficult questions. Skeptics argue that hypnosis can introduce suggestion and distort memory, and by the mid-1970s, the idea of alien abductions was already appearing in books and television. Those are valid concerns, but certain elements of Judy's account remain unusual. The persistent cold she described, the presence of the apparently human woman among the other beings, the emphasis on examining her feet, and the strange mechanical device placed over her face. These details appeared before many of the more familiar patterns of later abduction reports had fully taken shape. There is also the strange geography of the event itself, a quiet agricultural road, a bridge over dark water, and a 4-hour stretch of time that simply vanished. Cases like this rarely provide satisfying answers. They sit in that uncomfortable space between personal testimony and verifiable evidence. No radar tracked a craft that night. No witnesses reported lights in the sky. All that remains is Judy Kendall's memory, incomplete, unsettling, and forever tied to that lonely highway. At 8 o'clock, she crossed Cache Creek Bridge and phoned home. Hours later, she crossed it again. Whatever happened between those two crossings has never been accounted for. 4 hours gone. And when fragments of those hours finally came back, they didn't bring answers, just a deeper question. Who or what was waiting for her on that road. It was 1932. The Great Depression had tightened its grip across the American Midwest. North Dakota was a place of wide horizons, dry wind, and hard living. Near the small town of Killdeer, two young brothers were outside one evening playing in an isolated stretch of prairie land. One of those boys was Leo Dworshak. What he claimed happened next would stay with him for the rest of his life. As dusk settled over the fields, the brothers noticed something descending from the sky. It wasn't a shooting star. It wasn't an airplane. According to Leo, it was a craft, controlled, deliberate, coming down to land not far from where they stood. The object settled onto the ground. Naturally, the boys tried to approach it, but as they moved closer, they ran into something they couldn't see. Leo later described it as an invisible barrier, a force field. No matter how they tried, they could not move any closer. It physically stopped them, though there was nothing visible blocking their path. So they stood at a distance and watched. The craft itself, Leo said, rotated in what he called a complicated way. It appeared to have two distinct sections. Around its widest point was a band, almost like a belt, circling the middle of the object. This outer band displayed flashing colored lights and rotated around the craft. Inside that outer shell was another section. Leo believed the inner portion either stood still or rotated in the opposite direction. The motion was precise, mechanical, but completely silent. There was no engine noise, no wind disturbance, no smoke, no exhaust, just stillness and spinning light. After some time, the object rose and disappeared. For most people, that would have been the end of it. But according to Leo, it returned the following night. This time, things escalated. The craft landed again in the same area, and this time, the occupants made contact. Leo described the beings as very human in appearance, not grotesque, not monstrous. In fact, he emphasized that they looked remarkably alike, almost identical, as if they were twins. He later stated more than once, one alien looked very much like the next. There was something uniform about them. The beings invited the brothers aboard the craft. Inside, the boys were reportedly disinfected before being shown around. Leo described an advanced interior, clean, organized, efficient. He recalled chairs that would move and adjust themselves at the mere pointing of one of the beings' fingers, accommodating whoever was about to sit down. The ship itself, he claimed, operated within some kind of force field. It could become invisible when necessary. Then came the most extraordinary part of the encounter. The being showed the boys visions of the future. Leo later said they were shown events that had not yet occurred, including the rise of Nazi Germany and the development of what he described as a home computer. In 1932, Adolf Hitler had not yet taken full control of Germany, and the idea of a personal computer sitting in a home would have sounded like pure science fiction. The beings also told the boys something else, something chilling in its simplicity. They said humanity would reject their story. No one would believe them. They claimed to come from what Leo remembered as the 12th galaxy, and they told the boys that 12 of their kind were stationed on Earth at all times. Then the encounter ended. The craft departed, and the two boys were left standing again on the North Dakota prairie. The Killdeer Encounter is classified in UFO literature as a Type G case, a close encounter involving occupants and onboard experiences. But there are important questions that must be addressed. First, documentation. There's no widely known contemporary 1932 newspaper report detailing the event at the time it allegedly occurred. Much of the story appears in later retellings, including a report attributed to journalist Martin Kidston in the Independent Record of Helena, Montana. As with many early encounter cases, the timeline of when the story became public is critical. Second, the prophetic elements. By 1932, the Nazi Party was already active in Germany, though not yet fully in power, so the rise of Nazi Germany was not entirely unforeseeable. It was politically visible, even if its ultimate consequences were not yet known. The mention of a home computer is more striking. Early computing theory did exist in academic circles at the time, but personal computing would not become a reality until the 1970s and 80s. The question is whether the detail was truly part of the original account or whether it emerged later, shaped by hindsight. Third, the description of the beings. Human-looking, uniform, twin-like occupants would later become a common theme in 1950s contactee reports. Benevolent visitors, advanced technology, warnings about humanity, predictions of disbelief. If Leo's story was told in its full form decades after 1932, it may reflect the evolution of UFO lore rather than an untouched Depression-era encounter. And yet, the mechanical detail of the rotating dual-shell craft is interesting. The silent operation, the invisible barrier, the structured interior with responsive seating. These are not vague lights in the sky, they are specific technological descriptions. Were they the imaginative memories of a child? A story reshaped over time? A misunderstood natural phenomenon, later expanded in recollection, or something else entirely? Nearly a century later, we are left with a story told by a witness who insisted it happened, and who also insisted he had been warned that no one would believe him. And perhaps that warning is the most enduring part of the encounter, because here we are, still asking what really happened on that prairie in 1932. In June of 1969, Norfolk police quietly passed along a set of unusual reports to the British Ministry of Defense. What stood out wasn't just what was being described, it was when it happened. Two men living in the same part of East Anglia reported disturbing experiences less than 24 hours apart. They didn't know each other, they weren't looking for attention, and while their stories were different in detail, the effects they described were strangely similar. Sudden electrical interference, physical sensations, and a brief loss of control that left both of them shaken. Police believed the incidents might be connected. The Ministry of Defense took it seriously enough to open a file. The first report came from an electrical engineer named Robin Peck. I was driving through Bircham just after midnight, around 25 past 12. The roads were empty and quiet, and everything seemed normal. Then, without warning, the headlights on my car started to dim. At first, I thought it was just my eyes adjusting, but then I noticed the engine wasn't running properly either. Within seconds, the lights had faded so much I could barely see the road. I pulled over, and as I did, the engine cut out completely. There was no ignition light, nothing responded at all. I got out of the car thinking it had to be a battery problem and walked around to the bonnet. That's when I noticed the air felt different. It was hard to explain, almost like static electricity, but stronger. My hair felt like it was standing on end. I looked up and saw something hovering just beyond the trees. It was low, maybe 100 feet up, and completely silent. The shape didn't make sense. The closest thing I can compare it to is an inverted mushroom. It was huge, about the size of several cottages lined up together. It gave off a pale blue light with a kind of soft golden glow around it. The light didn't shine onto the ground like you'd expect. It seemed to hang in the air around it. The object didn't move at first, it just hovered there. I remember standing beside the car, aware of how quiet everything was and how small I felt looking up at it. There was no sound at all. It stayed there for at least a minute. Then it started to move, slowly at first, heading off toward King's Lynn. As it moved, the blue light seemed to leave a faint trail behind it, like a haze that hung in the air for a moment before fading. Once it was gone, I realized how shaken I was. I sat back in the car and waited for a few minutes, just trying to settle myself. Then, almost without thinking, I turned the key again. The engine started straight away. The lights came back at full strength. Everything was working perfectly, as if nothing had happened. Robin Peck later told police the experience had genuinely frightened him. Officers described him as level-headed, someone with no reason to make something like this up. His statement was passed on to the Ministry of Defense, but it wasn't the only report they received. Less than 24 hours later, another incident took place not far away, this one involving a 17-year-old trainee carpenter named Arthur Hendry. Unlike Peck, Hendry didn't report seeing anything in the sky. What happened to him was entirely physical. It was late, just before midnight, and I was getting ready to cycle home. Everything seemed normal. Then I heard a sound above me. At first, it was a high-pitched whistling noise. I looked up, expecting to see something, but there was nothing there. The sound got louder and deeper. It turned into a kind of heavy throbbing, like it was pressing down on me. Then suddenly, my body just locked up. Every muscle tightened at once. I couldn't move. I couldn't even let go of the handlebars. It felt like electricity was running through me from my head all the way down to my feet. It only lasted a few seconds, but it didn't feel like it at the time. Then it stopped. The sound disappeared, the pressure lifted, and I could move again. I felt shaky, but otherwise normal. There was nothing to see. No mark, no sign that anything had happened, but I knew it had. It felt like a strong electric shock, stronger than anything I'd experienced before. Arthur Hendry reported the incident to police shortly afterward. When officers compared the two accounts, they noticed something they couldn't ignore. In one case, a car had been completely disabled. In the other, a human body had been. Both involved strong electrical sensations. Both happened within a short distance of each other, and both took place within the same 24-hour period. Police linked the reports and sent them together to the Ministry of Defense. Investigators considered whether the men might have experienced some kind of rare atmospheric phenomenon, possibly something similar to ball lightning. It was a reasonable idea, but when the meteorological office checked the records, the skies over East Anglia were clear. No storms, no conditions that would normally produce that kind of effect. With no clear explanation, the case stalled. In an internal note, a Ministry of Defense desk officer acknowledged the difficulty of the situation, writing that the reports sounded like a genuine UFO before the case was closed. No further action was taken. 2 men, 2 nights, 1 small part of Norfolk. One experienced it through a machine, the other felt it directly. And whatever passed through that area in June of 1969 left behind no physical evidence, only 2 accounts that, even now, are difficult to explain. If you found these cases interesting, let me know what you think in the comments. And if you enjoy real encounter stories like these, make sure to like the video and subscribe for more. There's always more to uncover, and we're just getting started. Until next time, keep looking up.